What is sexual violence in your language, in the Marshallese language?
Like, I don't know what it
To you,
is.
Leia, sexual assault, sexual violence, this is taboo.
What is important is like to probe this question. I actually want to share the story.
Find data within just the Marshallese.
I too feel like
We went to Marshall Island a while ago. We asked question, do people do sex? Like, yeah, different question. People actually answer.
Thank you, Nina, for joining us in today on this episode of MEI the podcast.
Yahweh, and welcome to episode 3 of MEI the podcast. We're your hosts, Marcina Langarin.
And I'm Matthew John, project specialist at the Marshallese Educational Initiative, nonprofit based in Springdale, Arkansas.
Today, we have a very special guest, Nina Jusuf, and we are so proud that she is here with us today. Nina has been working on domestic violence and sexual assault issues since 1992. She is one of the founders of NAPIESV, which focuses on enhancing services to survivors and sexual violence in the Asian and Pacific Islander communities with practices and programs specific to their culture. Thank you so much, Nina, for being with us here today. How are you doing?
I'm good.
We're so happy to have you here. Going in straight into what NAPIESV. What is NAPIESV? Can you tell us the story of how NAPIESV started and came to fruition?
NAPIESV is a program of Monsoon API in solidarity based in Iowa. And we were co-founded by 5 women, API women, in 2011. And the mission is to end sexual violence in API communities.
What are some of the important factors in working with the API sexual violence survivors?
So, because as you know, there is no data, or maybe not a lot of data about sexual violence in API communities. So when we started NAPIESV, we decided to collect the data, collect the information by visiting organizations who work in the ground. So we visited organizations in 5 regions, talked to advocates, talked to men, women, elder, and youth, that specific groups, and also with like individuals, just people from the community. And what we found out is that naming sexual violence and safe spaces are the 2 main issues. That naming sexual violence itself is already an issue. Just naming it is already an issue. So that's what I think for now is 10 years. We still try to ask people, like when we have our session with you all yesterday, how do you name it? Can you name it? What is sexual violence?
And what do you mean by naming it?
So when you talk about like naming it, right? I don't know. I can ask you back the question. What is sexual violence in your language, in the Marshallese language? Do you have a name? Or do you have to explain it in words, in sentences?
Yeah, with the Marshallese, it's more so explaining it because there is no direct or actual definition for sexual violence.
So can you tell me how do you explain it if it's translated back to like English?
I can't say it in Marshallese, but if we were to explain it, sexual violence is violence going towards another person, but it doesn't have to be your partner or intimate partner. If I'm saying that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, but this is the question is, it's missing the sexual part,
Yes.
So that's it. I mean, naming it, if you don't name it in the right way, then you won't be able to find the solution in the right way. So if you say it, this is the violence that you inflict on others, that is like one thing. But if you say it is sexual violence that it's inflicting to others, it's the approach or, how we approach it is totally different. Just missing by that sexual part itself.
Right. And I think that's also like one of not a barrier, but it's something that it's not, we don't comfortably like say out loud. So I guess I understand like where you're coming from, because if I were to explain it, I would most likely
Skip that
leave
then?
out the sexual word, and I would just probably say it differently. And I think that's where the issue comes when we're trying to, talk with a all Marshallese audience. I think that's where we need to figure out different ways to how to better approach this type of.
Yes, and understand that it's the discomfort to talk about sex, right? But then if you frame it in a different way, that you're not talking about sex, the act of sex itself, but you can frame it as sexual health, as reproductive health, so it's coming from there, and people have like a different comfort level, I think.
Right.
Because you don't have to talk about it like frontal, kind of like about sexual violence. You can talk about coming in with the different ways, talking to the woman about maybe their menstruation, what is their, like, because you work with women, right? The women's program. And what does it mean with being pregnant? What does it mean with giving birth? So from the reproductive health first, and then you can lead into different question on sexual violence or sexuality.
Right. And you've mentioned, I guess from your experience, like, what do safe spaces look like? Are they in a church? Are they in a building? Are they with, certain things? Or how would you say what a safe space is?
When we talk about safe spaces, it's because sexual violence, the experience of sexual violence, it's kind of like heavy with a lot of shame and guilt and self-blame. So then from talking to folks, then we realized that we should create places. I mean, not necessarily building, but spaces where people can talk about their experience, talk about their body, talk about themselves as is, without being blamed, without like shame. So that's kind of like the first step toward the comfort of talking about sex, sexuality, sexual health. I think we talked about it yesterday that people do sex. It's not a taboo. But people do not talk about sexual violence. So something is like missing, right?
Right.
So why people can talk about sex, doing sex, but not talking about sexual violence? So what is missing in the middle? And because it's the guilt and shame and self-blame.
Right.
Creating the safe space is to provide that place for people to gather and to talk freely without that weight of guilt and shame.
And I guess going back on the word taboo, that is I really gravitated towards that conversation that we had yesterday, because in a lot of our culture competency classes, I've always said, sexual assault, sexual violence, this is taboo in our culture. But after you explained it and like really broke it down, like it makes me think that moving forward, we shouldn't be using the word taboo, because it is a conversation that we do have, but it's not as taboo as we think it is.
Great. So when you talk about taboo and then not really like breaking it down, what do you mean by taboo?
Right.
That you don't talk about it, or you're not supposed to talk about it, or you cannot talk about it, right?
So it's like a little mixture of all of those together.
Right? And then when we ask us like, why? What do you think? And I think working on a sexual violence field, it's what is important is like to probe this question, like to break this myth, or believe that it's not true. Because sometimes the way I say it is, this is really funny, because we talk about health, we talk about different kind of health, right? But then when it's part on the sexual organ or the reproductive organ. We can like skip it, like we talk about headache, we talk about whatever
Right.
pain, and then this part you can like skip it, and then you go to your knee, you go to your ankle. So why is it? It's just a part, it's your body. When we talk about taboo, going back to like what you say, it's why is it? Because Mira and I, we went to Marshall Island a while ago, and we asked question, do people do sex? Like, yeah. And then we asked different questions. People actually answer. So it's not a taboo because people actually talk about it, right?
Right.
The next question is when sexual violence happen, and then we talk about it as taboo. Then it goes like to blaming the survivor. The weight is on the victim survivors that they actually cannot talk about it. Remember whether we cannot, or which part that you're able to. So this part is for survivor victims, like you cannot talk about it because this is taboo. But then what happened on the flip side? The flip side is when we don't talk about it, then the accountability of the one who did harm not happen. Right. So then the harm doer like off the hook technically because we cannot talk about it, or the victim survivor cannot talk about it. So the weight is on the victim survivor, and then the harm doer off the hook. So have to be careful when we talk about taboo. So don't stop there, but probe the question.
You explained it so well. It really made me think like, yeah, that's definitely not taboo. It's just a conversation that we don't want to have, or we're not ready to have yet. So we just label it as taboo.
Yeah. I feel like it's just another barrier that we need to break down within our community, especially for the people that are being like victimized, to stop the perpetrators, to just shift the narrative. This is an ongoing issue, but I think talking about it in terms of like throwing away the taboo part of things would definitely shift the perspective.
Nina, how can we ensure that service providers are culturally competent and responsive to the needs of Pacific Island survivors?
I think first is to build trust, right? To build trust with the community. So understanding that MEI has been around and trusted. So that's like one like, people, because we asked yesterday, right, or today, that do people come here just to hang out, So that is a good thing as a program to be trust, people actually trust you. And then like understanding your position in the community, in different communities. So I think you mentioned it. Who are you in the community? Are you, if you want to talk to the younger generation, then maybe the younger generation, like the younger staff need to go and not the older one, So each one of us has kind of like a gift that in ending sexual violence. So find your gift. It can be through music. It can be through like a different dance. It can be through writing. It can be, creating a program is not, it doesn't have to be this stiff thing, like it can be like very flexible, and understanding the culture. We talk about in the webinar earlier about what is like food, what is the importance of food in the culture? What is the importance of like gathering? What is important as like community? So if the food is not just the food itself, but what does it food mean? So if you are doing the potluck, you mean, like everybody need to contribute and to do like the cooking. So there is this thing of collective, practices. So how do you do that? So then the collective that happen in our culture, whether it's back in the home country or home island, it can be replicated like here and not as working as kind of like individual.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's important for us who are working the community to really understand the practices in the community. So you cannot just come in without really doing your homework, and then you end up, making someone upset or disrespected. I think Benedict talked about respect and love, and right. So if that is your value, then practice that. Yeah, I think he said like love, right?
Yeah, love, respect, togetherness, and
compassion.
Marshall's.
It's like compassion, something.
Yeah, and togetherness, we say ipindon. So in a lot of our songs and a lot of the things that we do, is ipendron, which means togetherness.
So there you go. You know, what is the pillars or the values in your community and
Right.
how to practice it. It doesn't mean that it's easy, you know, like you want to build like togetherness, but some people don't even know how to do togetherness anymore because it's so, however, life here, it's so kind of like individualistic in a sense.
As opposed to being back home, you know, like everybody's thinking about your neighbor, you're thinking about your grandma, like everybody around you, your community, but you come here and you just kind of forget those values. I think that's something that would help a lot, is focusing on our pillars and our values. What are some of the disclosure or underreported forms of GBV within Pacific Islander communities?
So in the mainstream program, we usually stuck into reporting or not reporting, and the data always, you know, this is the number of sexual violence in this community, and then there is a note that this is actually not all the number because people are not disclosing. So then the number is always low. Or lower than what is actually happened. But when we work with the sexual violence victim survivor, we have to connect things because of the shame and guilt and victim survivor blaming. Who actually want to share the story, right? Disclose or report. And what does it mean with reporting? You know, we talked yesterday about domestic violence is family court, but then if it's sexual violence, and domestic violence is family court, and then sexual violence is criminal court. Like, who wants to go to criminal court? What is the chance for you to win the case of sexual violence? And then re-traumatizing, because you have to tell the story. You have to kind of like defend yourself. And what if people don't believe you? You know, so we always see that going to criminal justice system for a survivor who choose to do that, it's actually they're taking risk, and that's fine if that's what they want. You know, so going to the system is taking risk because you don't know whether you were going to win or not. So what is the other way of looking into kind of like healing and wellness and justice? And the way we see it is justice and wellness or healing is the two sides of the coin. But then we have this belief or connotation that justice has to be criminal justice and healing has to be like a therapy session. But it's not. So the question is, have you asked the victim survivor what is justice for them and what is healing for them? We have this automatic like pilot thing, especially for organizations who work with the DV. So you have to get restraining order and then you have to report and then you go to like this. And then here you need to get counseling and so on and so forth. But we never really asked what is like healing for you and what is justice for you. We asked one of the survivors, what is justice for you? And what she said is, I want people to acknowledge that the rape actually happened and that she wants support. That's it. That is justice for her. So sometimes when we said we are a survivor center and then we forgot to ask this important question and then we run with it and not even checking anymore. Like, you know, what is justice and what is healing? Healing is not as complicated as we think because when sexual violence happen in the lifespan, right? From someone is like very young to like very old, it happened in any places and any time. So then when the center of like the approach to support sexual violence survivor is healing, so then healing has to be accessible and available for any age, for young to old at any time and any place. So if your focus on the healing approach is only talk therapy, then what you're going to do? Because it's not accessible 24/7 and people might not have the money to do it. So then when we look at how we like culturally specific community, so we have to go back to that, our culture. What healings mean? Healings come from food, healing come from water, healing come from dance, you know, and that people in the community, we know, like, if I need this, I can go to that person. If I need this, I can go to, if I need massage, I can go to that person. If I need herb and all that stuff, I can go to that person. So you have to kind of like see what are option for like healing and what is the option for justice. And it's not complicated.
You bring both justice and healing together because I feel like the first step to healing is justice. I feel like you can heal a lot more efficiently and effectively if you know that at the end of the day, justice has been served. Like,
so about healing is this thing, like two things. Your grief, your pain, one is need to be expressed and that need to be acknowledged.
mm-hmm.
So that's how are you going to do that, right? So that is like why we think about the safe spaces, because that is the place that if the person choose to express it, they can express it. But expression doesn't have to be a disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
You can write a song, you can dance it out, you can write a poem, you can, like a different thing, how to express it. And then when it's shared, expressed, then other people can like acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is. Rather than express it in court, and rather than, and then in court, you are questioned because that's how court work. Instead of acknowledge, you are questioned whether your statement is true or not.
Mm.
So this is like the thing, like how you do it, you ask question and like question, you ask further until you find the answer.
So utilizing, in terms of healing, one of the many ways would be utilizing art as a medium to express how you feel, whether that be like music, writing songs, or creating different dishes from your favorite food staples. And so it's really interesting. I did want to go back onto the data portion of what you spoke about. Updated? Is it skewed? Is it something that we can find online? Is it accessible? Like, what does that entail?
There is, what is it? National Sexual Assault Resource Center. You can find data, and I think it's updated every 2 years or every years. And Office of Violence Against Women just put out a report a couple of months ago, 2 months ago. Also, what is the kind of like the snapshot of the violence, different form of violence in US. Again, it's always underreported. So then how do you can use it like this. So you cannot really fix it into like the number. The data help you to paint like a big picture, right? And then it's not like 100% correct, so it's more than that. But when you start implementing it to like a program, then the number is maybe not captured in here. So here is just to give you like an idea, a bigger picture. But then when you start going to the community, you can talk to the community. Do you know anybody?
Right. Right. And I think the reason why I asked that is because like when I'm trying to find data within just the Marshallese community specifically, it's so hard to find that data because one, it's either outdated or because it's not, as you mentioned, it's underreported. And so, I'm going to go into the next question. So what role can community leaders and organizations play in raising awareness, preventing GBV, and supporting survivors?
In our culture, we have this positioning, right? Whether it's a chief, whether it's an elder, and there is this hierarchy in a sense. So understand that they have to understand what is kind of like their role in the sense people look up to them. And they can help in giving like understanding about gender-based violence, sexual violence, and understand that their role is also crucial in naming it and creating that safe spaces. So it's always important to work with them. And I know it's not always easy, but you have to tirelessly, I think, influence and have conversation with them. So to say it in the place that is very faith-oriented, very religious, then it's very important of this faith leaders to kind of understand what is sexual violence, gender-based violence. If you work with a chief, system, then how do you talk to the chief about this? Because usually people go to that place first. to that position because thinking that they can solve the problem.
Ever since I started my role working, in the women's advocacy program, in the beginning, it was always so hard to talk to the community. One, because when they look at us, when they look at me, they just see us as a kid, basically. So they're asking like, okay, so why am I getting information from a child? One, what do they know about sexual violence, domestic violence? Why are they even here to begin with? And so I think that's why, like, going into this program, I was very like in and out because of the feedback that I got saying that I'm a kid. But even though I knew so much about the importance of these discussions, and so that was one of the barriers that I had to break through myself. It did take a couple years, but now I feel like I'm more confident in talking about it, but I feel like I still need to add those specific terms when I'm explaining certain things. And so I just wanted to push light on that.
So this is like the thing, right? I mean, that's very common. It's like, what do you know? You're
Right,
not even
right.
married. Like, what do you know about domestic
Exactly.
violence, right? Like, you don't even have kids. Like, like this. Why you talk about this? But you don't need to be like frontal in the sense when you come to the community and suddenly you can like preaching or talk about this. You can have the conversation about film. Maybe if I don't know if they are like around 40, find a film that has like sexual violence, their time. And just like, oh, let's watch movie, and then you stop at a certain scene and then you say, what do you think about that? So it's not come from you. The thing is let them define what it is themselves. So that's like one thing that you're not coming with, oh, this is what it is. Let them define, okay, like watch a movie and then see what they said about it. That's like one thing. And different, just like conversation. That's not, come over for food. And then you can ask like, oh, how is your day? And what we did with the community on Guam is we asked them to pull their phone and look at their local newspaper and search like sexual violence. So then it came up like a lot. And then we asked them to actually read it. Like we divided into group, read it and ask them like, what is the solution for this? We're not even talking about anything. We just asked them like, go search on your phone. This is your own community. What you gonna do?
And just to add a question onto that, do you feel that there's more sexual violence in the Pacific Island communities as opposed to the U.S.? Or do you know?
No, this is one of the conversations that happened, I think, in our Slack about Guam, like higher, But you have to kind of like see if it's count per capita. It's like per 100 people. So if you are like smaller community, then it will look higher. And then if you look into even screening it like more that it's just for API, if the whole place is like API, of course the number will be higher. So when you look for the number, you have to look into those things. Is it per capita or how do you look at the number itself, how it's collected? And just to piggyback on this data, when you said it's hard to find what is the number of sexual violence in martialist community, you can do like a simple survey, anonymous survey. And you can do like the snapshot out of like 20 people that you interview. X amount of number of people has experienced XYZ.
Matthew, you are part of the advocacy program, and you recently just had a roundtable with some members from the community. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah. So this roundtable with some of the members of our community was to talk about men's mental health and domestic violence in the Marshallese community. It was a wide range, 18 to under 30. We would just try to keep it at a young men's age, because we have very similar points of view and opinions on certain topics, but it's wide enough for there to be a little bit of diversity. Lots of great conversation, from the guys. I just remember that at the end of the roundtable, some of these guys had shared that they had told us in the group, they told us things that they've never told anybody, and they've only told their wife, or they haven't even told their wife, and they left the roundtable saying that they felt a lot lighter, knowing that they could share amongst other men and feel understood by other young men. And I think that was a very pivotal point for young men in the Marshallese community. Like, I too feel light because I shared some things in there too that I've never shared before.
So back to like the sharing, disclosure or healing. Remember, I said two things. One is expressing like what you hold here, and then acknowledgement, right? So the men in the round table, they express and be acknowledged with the group.
Yeah.
So then that's healing happen. Then you feel lighter. So that makes sense, right?
So much sense. I get it. I got you.
Got it? Okay. So, and then the thing is, we often make assumption that the man is the harm doer. But we also have to to think here that men can also be victim survivors. And that's also harder for them to share the story, to disclose, because people will say, you're a man, like why you're a victim. So the guilt and the shame is also big. So then the other flip of that is when the man is the harm doer. So maybe when he did it, he didn't really understand what is man and what is the role and responsibility. But then later on, understanding that what he did, he harmed someone, and in sexual violence is not only rape, and people think sexual violence condition is always rape, but it's not. So forcing someone, not having, not having a consent that the partner didn't agree, all this thing, unwanted touch, So once usually men especially understand that, oh, what I did was I was sexually assaulted someone. I'm did this violence and was not thinking totally that I actually forced that person. I actually did this thing that is unwanted. So then what happened when naming it? Now they name it as what it should. Then how do you repair that? What already happened? How the person, the man, have accountability. What is his accountability to repair? Now that he understands that he able to name it. So then what is the healing for him? And then also what is the healing for the victim?
We have another one coming up in May. So I'll bring up some of these points to them and see what they think.
It's great.
I feel like that's a great start to, eventually bringing more young men or young adults into your conversations that you will have in the future. And so I applaud you for taking initiative and starting this men's group because it's needed.
Of course.
Because it's not talked about a lot, but it's definitely needed.
Not a taboo.
It's not a taboo, you guys. It's not a taboo.
Do a t-shirt. It's not a taboo, please.
I was inspired. I was personally inspired by that roundtable in Hawaii.
It's good to hear.
I wrote 8 pages about it. I was very touched by that one.
And I think that just goes back to what you highlighted on safe spaces. Once we create safe spaces for young adult men and men in general, feel like they are more able to connect with others amongst them and really tap into the discussion and share what they're scared to share about with others, even if it's their wives as well. So that's why I really do think that creating safe spaces is so, so important.
Definitely.
What is the biggest takeaway you hope listeners will take away from our discussion today or gain from our discussion today?
It's not a taboo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And just talk about it or express it somehow, get it out of your body, your energy that is stuck in there. Healing is possible
Healing is needed for sure.
and possible. So it's
Impossible.
achievable,
The past 2 days have been great. We really want to thank you and Leah for coming all the way out to Springdale, Arkansas to spend time with us. And I could probably speak for the whole team, but we really did learn a lot from both of you. And I feel like the discussions that we have, the time where we were able to actually have dialogue amongst each other was actually also really important, because there are some points that the team said that I never knew that they even thought about. And so I felt that was really important to do with my team, especially.
I don't know. Every time I speak with you, I just feel so light. Like, I don't know what it
To you,
is.
Leah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our episode of MEI the podcast. Be sure to subscribe to MEI the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. We want to give a huge shout out to Nina and Leah from NAPIESV for joining us in today. As always, we're your hosts, Matthew and Marcina, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.